Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger, as always. And even though I'll put the Cash App in the description, again, I don't want anybody hurting themselves this time of year because of it. Because a lot of you, although we really should have left Christmas centuries ago, left it behind, a lot of you are in debt and you're strapped. So anyway, that being said, the reason I'm recording this is that every so often I get a reminder as to how they really feel. And one Muslim brother, The Features, YouTuber, salam alaikum to you, sir. By the way, you need to get back to putting your stuff on Odysee too as a backup, has talked about how it is that the red pill awareness has messed up certain Muslims, and they're usually non-black Muslims who come from stable family backgrounds and really didn't need all of this red pill talk. The Features is right in an ideal situation. That's true in an ideal scenario. This is where things change, and I don't blame The Features for not knowing this, but I'll still say it. They're not as patriarchal as we think. There's a level past which they ain't gonna tolerate a gynocracy and gynocentrism, but they ain't as patriarchal as what we think either. In Pakistan, nobody marries two wives. Why the hell not? Like nobody. In Bangladesh, it's very rare. Why? It needs to be done more often. Wales. As a matter of fact, northern Nigerians tend to be more patriarchal, and they're very good about allowing their women to work. The women are actually very developed, relatively speaking. Women are highly educated on average if the husbands are educated. But they're patriarchal. And at the end of the day, when she acts up and her family sees her act up towards her husband, her family says to him, it's time for you to get her some help. And that means another wife. You think I'm playing? Nah, bruh. I've been hanging out with Nigerians. Now, one reason I want to go back to my old city is the same thing. That's who I hung out with. They ain't playing games. One Sudanese Hausa man, not Nigerian, had a Nigerian Hausa wife and a Sudanese Hausa wife. So he speaks Arabic. He speaks Hausa. He, on his vacation, splits half the vacation. He splits the vacation into two halves, one with each wife in each country. That's how this works. These men are not mean to their wives, but they don't tolerate no mess. They listen and they make a final decision on average, which is the way it should be. We think that all these other Muslims are just so, we think they're so patriarchal, more patriarchal than what they are. We have a stereotypical view of them just like they have of us. So we might think they don't need this. No. See, their kids still grew up in the West if they migrated. Maybe in Pakistan they don't. They probably need it there too, though, because they're not making marriage easy in Pakistan. They're not making marriage easy in Saudi Arabia. They're not making marriage easy in Afghanistan. And it's to the point that if a child disappears for a while, they are worried about the worst. They're not worried about a child just being hurt, just having gone in front of an oncoming car. They're not worried about these things. They're worried about someone nabbing them up because they're dangerous to kids. And most men don't resort to measures like that because they can't get married. The problem is that once someone does resort to it, they could have a number of victims. So the children are as unsafe with a few predators around as they would be if most unmarried guys were predators. Do you see where I'm going with this? The effects tend to be about the same. So maybe they do need it even here. I mean, I think in Saudi they need it. I really do, because who are these dowries for? It's to satisfy the family, but it's her right that God gave to her that is being exploited by the families. Look, what I'm getting at here is that you got another, you have the white manosphere. And they're not like us. Not at all. What it really is dangerous is not so much if Muslim guys learn about red pill awareness. If they change the behavior, start mistreating women, they didn't do anything, that does become a problem. But it's not red pill awareness itself that is dangerous to the Muslim. It actually helps Muslim guys. In the West, it's probably more necessary. Hell, you know what? It depends on the environment. I'll just say that. But what is dangerous, and the features rightly pointed this out, is this far rightism. Dangerous for anybody. And I saw a little bit of it in the black manosphere a few years ago. Some of us we got a little too conservative. Man, stop talking about slavery. No, shuck that fit. Talk about it. No, when a white guy comes in the room, it is a valid excuse for everything. Not between us. As soon as one of them comes in the room, don't make it a valid excuse. Why? Because, frankly, some of these conservative Negroes, these coon-servatives and these Republi-coons, instead of calling us to better, they simply started making excuses for massa to keep on benefiting from what they had done. See, Tommy Sotomayor has said things that are absolutely correct, but that does not mean that this far right, super white conservative crowd is not going to take what he says as an excuse to justify their racism. When I say we are not the same, I'm not only talking about black men and black women. I'm saying black men and white men are still not the same. We've been against being trampled on for racial reasons or for gender reasons that were used to supplant the resistance to being trampled on for racial reasons. We're against both of these things on average. That's why I say I'm pro-black male. I'm just as capable as any one of you of assessing an individual white man individually while still telling you that collectively that people ain't worth shit. And I'm talking about the Western European. And as a matter of fact, what about the Eastern European? See, they love to sit up and compare Africa to Europe. No. Don't compare it to Western Europe. Those are the ones that did the colonization. Compare it to Eastern Europe, who didn't colonize. Look at Romania as an example. Romania is known for corruption. It doesn't take much to get some judge to sign something so they can do a raid. And if you got corruption like that, what other corruption do they have? Myron Gaines, who we know is terrible as a Muslim by his own admission and confessions. Some even doubt his Islam at all. Has sat up and said that women have come to him and told him that they were offered money to lie on Tate and they turned it down. He's exonerated Tate. So this means that somebody's being offered money, and since he lives in Romania, Tate is facing he's facing the consequences of something. That is true. I don't think he continued doing the same things for income after he became Muslim. I doubt it. But what I can say is that he's going to be paying for some of these things that he did. But what he did was not illegal in Romania. So that means Romania is still corrupt if they punish him for anything at all. Because as far as actual crimes go, no, the evidence is he didn't do it. Are they going to exonerate him? Probably not. That's corruption. That's Eastern Europe. The hell is going on there? And I know I almost rented a place in Atlanta. I almost rented a place from a Romanian landlord. Guess what wound up being the case? We moved in and it was not like what we had seen before. We looked at the place, then moved in and saw it was in worse condition than when he initially showed it to us. We were like, oh, shuck that fit. Come to find out that in the state of Georgia, the electricity was not supposed to be off in the first mother cuss word place. And the water was not supposed to be off when we rented from him. And it was. He was going to try to take us to court and say, no, you're going to pay for that first month even if you move out. We said to him, we already talked to a lawyer and found out that the conditions aren't legal. We're going to pay the first month's rent. Man, we'll turn around and sue you for the deposits we got to pay to somebody else to move in at the last minute. Nigga, say something else. We can sue each other, or you can fuck the shuck up and go find someone else and turn that damn water and electricity on. He was corrupt. And this is in the U.S. Now, I haven't heard any of this white conservative talk amongst us in the black manosphere in a while, but I want to make sure that shit don't pop up anymore. I've rage quit conversations with niggas about that. Man, I don't know why he left the panel, man. I actually like Black Mind. Yeah, well, I don't like you, nigga. But more importantly to me not liking you is the reason I don't like you is because you're going to sit up here and take an accurate historical answer to a historical question and then say don't talk about slavery. Nigga, that's the answer to the question. Yeah, black people are traumatized, men and women alike. We just sitting up and saying that we ain't going to tolerate that as an excuse for sisters to act any kind of way with us because we can't act any kind of way with them. Yeah, they got hurt during slavery. Those who played a part in helping enslave us and those who did not alike wound up getting hurt. But the deal at the end is that we simply said, we ain't gonna let you use your hurt as an excuse no more. We traumatized, you traumatized. I'm not willing to bleed on you. You insisting on bleeding on me, but that's the cracker that cut you. And I'm gonna tell you some of the things that they've been saying. And I say this because the features, you and I are gonna start hearing some of this crap coming from the Muslims. And I'm gonna say ahead of time, when I hear one of them talk crap like this, I'm gonna straight up say, you a kafir. If you are a Muslim and you start talking like what I'm about to show you what someone said, as far as I'm gonna call you a kafir, disbelieving. I'm making takfir on you categorically once you start spouting this stuff. There was white fellow that says where it ends, and he was saying this in response to Better Bachelor, and this is not on YouTube. He said this on Odysee. He said where it ends with white people becoming a world minority because half of us are too stuck in fupa to realize racism, ethnic tribalism, and xenophobia aren't always a bad thing, but a survival technique bred into our species. The other half have been cowed into silence and shame for promoting their own self-interest and instead go along with handling our wealth, resources, and everything we built to the trash of the world that even with their own countries, continents, and massive aid packages can't get their fit together. That isn't bigotry, it's the harsh reality. So I wrote it and asked them back. Racism, ethnic tribal, and xenophobia. So is it okay when black people do the same thing and actually only practice these things against whites and other people of color that looked up to whites? Look, if these things are okay, then what's wrong with what Western women are doing to men? We're either fair or we're not. The white manosphere is distinct from the black manosphere largely because many white men who are red pill aware think that only feminism is wrong. Well, in this case, we're right and y'all are wrong. Now, Better Bachelor wants to be fair, but many who listen to him don't care about that. So he decides to reply back. Context. Learn what it is and how to apply it to questions. Do so before your toddler brain replies to me, please. You know how they have to be. He goes on to say to me, majority of what dumb niggas do today are not for survival, but she agreed, especially with all the help whites give them through welfare and other nonsense that don't work. Western women were never oppressed. What they were doing is not for survival. It's instead self-destructive that ruins their gender as well as ours. But again, context. You fail to add any and just generalize, which makes you a moron. And in response to my saying to him that the white manosphere was distinct and why, he says, LOL, okay, dude, your ass is not a source of valid information. Majority of men are afraid to speak on this cuss word because our current society will attempt to destroy them over it. So any poll statistics that you bring up are not valid. You don't speak for the whole, no one does. And a Better Bachelor was being fair. He'll be holding blacks accountable for all the damage they do to this country, from mass looting of stores, violence in schools and against teachers, the drugs, the crime, burning down cities by riding over criminals, to even pushing to defund police, such that these areas are now seeing all-time high crime records. He doesn't want to be fair. He wants to virtue signal because he hasn't finished his red pill, and he is still a weak beta male trying to pretend ethnicities aren't different, which is the same BS feminists about trying to tell us men and women are equals. We are not. The results are plain and easy to see throughout history. Now, do you see how inconsistent this man is? He wants to say, well, the races are as about as different as the genders. We whites are smarter than niggers. That's what this guy wants to say. He wants to talk about, again, he doesn't want to look at the difference between the black genders. Some knuckleheads looting because they're broke, they're poor, they're frustrated. I understand a sense of frustration. Because I ain't gonna lie, if I wind up poor, I'm probably gonna wind up dead. So I understand the sense of frustration with poverty, but he wants to sit up and compare them to us. Those of us in the black manosphere don't agree with none of that stuff. We just know that the guys that are doing it, not only are they right in their frustration, but they're wrong and they're reacting emotionally because they were raised by emotional moms with no dads to check this mess. And if dad was there, he wasn't allowed to check it because the system that his people set up wasn't going to allow dad to stick around if he did check this foolishness. And this cracker, yeah, I said it because he loves to crack the whip on us, and even on Better Bachelor for not being racist enough, is a prime example of this. And some cats in the black manosphere used to listen to these crackers. I told you that when you hear black women going in on other black women for not being hard enough on us, that's a sign of hatred. Well, it's the same thing with them crackers. You hear crackers going in on fair white men for not being racist enough, that's a sign of hatred. This dude here even goes on to tell me that Tommy Sotomayor was a great example because he would always distinguish between upright black men and dumb niggas. Well, yeah, I mean, we'll talk like that, but we're still not the same. We're absolutely not the same. Not our societies. This guy goes on to say more stuff. And I'm really not here to cry about this, don't get it twisted. But this is a reminder, and I figured I'd share with y'all. Because what I've seen is that this seems to come in waves. This black conservatism seems to come in waves. It is one thing to look, and it's the right thing to do, to look at certain bad habits we have and say we're going to get rid of that. We're not going to justify negosity anymore. Now, he does distinguish in between oppression and rejection. I give this guy credit for that. However, he wants to say that what his people engaged in was not oppression. But then, in the same breath, he was complaining because of how white men are finding that some of them are outright being told that they're not wanted in the job markets. Some of them have been told we're not looking for white men. Now, that's a type of virtue signaling, but is it black women saying to white men, we ain't looking for white men in job markets? They can't get away with that. And when he mentioned this, it dawned on me. I started thinking, I realized that's one of the things black women are jealous of. They don't want to tell white men, we ain't looking for white men for these jobs, but they want to be able to say this. They want to tell us, but they want to be able to say this to their men, to white men, the way that Becky says this to her man. Funny thing is, if that is the case, white men are just now beginning to face it. Now, this same white guy that told me that any stats and sources, anything I'd bring up would not valid, told me to cite stats and sources. And he tells me that he can show me video after video black saying the most racist stuff. The ones he's seeing that say the most racist stuff usually have nothing to take away from them anyway. Look at what Kanye said about our history, what Kylie Irving said about a link to a movie that somebody else put up. Didn't even say it, just posted a link to it. Look what happened with those guys. If you're black and you got something they can take away from you, they're going to take it away from you. There's one valid thing he did talk about. He said that one reason that our races are so different, and he cited an average African IQ of 70. I'm not sure how well they can measure that, to be honest with you. Because what are they doing? Going and talking to the bilinguals? I bet you they're going and talking to people who live far away from any urban centers and don't speak any language in which these IQ tests are written. I bet you that's what they're doing. But in any case, now, there's one possibility. It could be that the average IQ of many Africans is brought down if the women are as hybristophilic there as they are in the diaspora, but I doubt that's the case. But one thing he does say, he says, our trash are highly relegated, yours are celebrated. That is true, but the black manosphere is not where they're celebrated. This is where they get called out. We, the black manosphere, are the ones calling out the trash that the nigger population from which we come keeps celebrating. And the funny thing is, our trash really aren't that many. They're not a major portion of our population. Actual felons and niggerilla stereotypes. They're not really a major portion. They do get celebrated. That's true. They get too much leeway amongst us. That's true. But the exception is the black manosphere. That right off the bat means that they are not allies as a whole. Individuals amongst them can be, but they are not allies as a whole. So when I tell you we are not the same, don't forget I'm talking about them too. Because they're not capable of understanding racial equality. It's not something they can understand. They believe that whatever their ancestors did to our ancestors is okay. And they sit up and they say, get over it, N-word. And they also believe that their women simply not hiring them, which is rejection when they do it to us, not oppression. It's oppression of them and it's wrong and it's against God and blasphemous. So I'm going to say to those that are Muslim, whether you black or not, when I catch one of you talking this type of stuff, you can correct anybody as long as you know they actually did wrong and as long as you admit that this applies to your people too. The minute you start sounding like one of them, talking like whites are better or that they're normal and we're not, I'm going to call your butt a disbeliever. Because I was about 2 inches away from saying that to Amira Exiled Lioness, the one that's on the, or that's been on the Lapeef network. For what reason? Because she wanted to sit up and say, well, you know, the whites are not really the most racist. It's the blacks that are, and the Asians are the most racist. I'm like, really? The Asians might be the most racist against black people, but their own youth are calling them out for that. It's not black people that are out here attacking us. You know who it is. Stop lying. I saw the video. Phil Scott covered that. I was about to get on Amira's behind. I mean, for one, she goes up on camera without a hijab but wants to talk about the normality of her people's society. No, why don't you have a hijab on, Amira? And I'm not saying this with hatred, but Amira, why do you not have a hijab on? Is it because black folks ain't wearing hijab in the West when they become Muslim? Or is it because the French colonized your parents' homeland and y'all stopped wearing the hijab? Which one is it? Let's be honest, because when you look at the bad habits that Arabs have, they don't pick up bad habits from black people. They share some with us, but they don't pick them up from us. They don't imitate us like that. Gulf Arabs are more likely to imitate us than any Mediterranean Arab is. That's real. They'll take our music, some things from the way we dress. They might get a few things from our celebrities, and usually those aren't really bad habits. No, when you see them smoking, their materialism, these are things they either got from themselves, like tribalism, or comes to smoking, they got them from Europeans. Because ain't no conservative Arab at all, Christian or Muslim, gonna smoke because they saw Africans doing it. That's not how they do it. And it's a subconscious thing. They don't have to sit up and think about it. They're not going to take on bad habits from black folks. If black folks have a mistaken understanding of Islam at all, somewhere in one particular location, they're going to attribute that to most of us. At least to that whole country they will. So I'm going to tell y'all, those of y'all that are Muslim, go ahead and get the red pill awareness and knowledge. Don't change your reactions into an un-Islamic reaction at all. Don't do that. Not even for 1 second. I'm letting y'all know right off the bat. Because when I catch one of y'all doing something dumb just because Europeans do it, and you ain't picked up even neutral habits from black folks because they're not Arab enough, I'm getting on you. But when you start spouting this sort of stuff politically, that's it right off the bat. Kafir. I'm telling you now. Not for saying something that is morally conservative across the board, but when you start acting like there's something more immoral about my race than there is about the one that colonized your races, and mine, because y'all ain't all the same race. Disbeliever. I'm gonna say it outright, because you gonna turn around and justify white supremacy. Now I get why a white disbeliever would do something like that. They're not okay for doing it. I'm never going to forgive them for it. I just know what their reasons are. You don't have a reason. And that's why I jump down the throats of some of you Arabs that say that you're white. Sometimes you are, other times you're not. But when there's ambiguity, whites and us have agreed when there's ambiguity, you ain't white. And they treated you like that and shown you that they're not going to take you as white. So when you sit up and tell us that you're white and there's ambiguity and there's debatability about that, what that says to us is, I will side with them in the event of a race war. That's what that tells us. And that means you have canceled your religion if you're Muslim. You canceled it if you were Christian. That's what that means. That means that white supremacy is actually your religion, not Islam, not Christianity, and not Judaism. That means that the white man is your God, not Allah. And that's why I go hard in the paint when y'all start talking that stuff. And you black folks, it's the same thing. As far as I'm concerned, you start talking like that, that means your God is white folks or whiteness. And I'll give you the business too, but I've already done that. We do need more conservatism, behaviorally speaking, amongst us. And the black manosphere is the bastion of that. And the minute I catch somebody preaching even the right thing for the wrong reasons, I'm going to jump down your throat, because I done already done it with the Arabs. I told you how they handle racism and how they handle an actual discussion about it. I told you they'll say the same three things, and they're saying these three things that are correct before the incorrect reason, for wrong reason. They'll say, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that everybody's equal in his last sermon. He did say that all origins are equal, but he also said that people with taqwa, meaning piety, are superior to those with less or none. In other words, he said that the criteria is piety. Now, that's not something we can objectively measure all the time, but that is the criteria. That's the differentiation. So they'll rightly quote him. Then they'll say, Bilal was black, khalas. And the third thing they say is, if you catch them on calling us abid, which means slaves, that's the plural form of abd, which is slave, then they'll say, kuluna abid Allah, which means we're all slaves of Allah. Now, these are three true statements in our religion. Why you think they're saying them? You think they're saying them because that you know they're saying them to shut you up so you don't correct them for calling them slaves. That's why less than a week ago, I had a conversation with an African brother working here from Chad. Working at the coffee shop, we chopped it up. I thought it was a black Saudi at first. We chopped it up, and I told him, when they say these things, the right way to answer is to call them the T word. Right off the bat. Straight up. They used to call you slave. Just say, all right, bomb belt. Why? Because you calling them that is not as bad as them calling you slave. When they call you slave on account of your race, not nationality, not language, not tribe, on account of you being black. They don't even call the black Indians this. If they have straight hair. Slave. You black, we recognize you as black, slave. When they call you that, they're saying that God made you a slave to somebody else. Because they're not saying slave of God, slave of the merciful, slave of the king, slave of the resurrector. They're not saying any of this. Slave of the avenger, slave of the just. Yeah, one of his names is the avenger. They're not saying any of this. They're just saying slave. So and then they try to justify. They're trying to say that God is as racist as they are. They're blaming God for being unfair and saying that this is just a human instinct with which we're all created. And yes, whites are naturally, objectively more beautiful than you niggers. And these are people that I've told you are not violent, and they're not hateful, and they're not out to harm us. But their software's in the back of their brain. I stated this before. And guess what? They'll sit up and say these things. And when you call them the T word in response, or call them bomb belt or something like that, you're talking to that person that said something dumb. So you're getting on him for being stupid. You didn't blame God for his stupidity or for his racism. So you still are better than that person. Because he thinks he's not racist, which means he thinks that God is not fair. That's what he's thinking. Subconsciously. And when you get this out, when you can finally get them to fuck the shuck up and stop interrupting you for long enough for you to get this point across to them, the good thing about most Arabs is that they actually take the correction and say, dang, that was wrong of me, I'm really sorry. And they actually don't forget these sort of things. Ask me how I know. The first city in which I lived, I called them and checked them on this and did this. We had debates about it. I went back to visit a few months ago for one of my play nephew's weddings. The one that now lives here in Riyadh. The younger one was the one that got married. Lives here in Riyadh. His older brother's the one that picked me up. I told y'all about in my last live stream. Yeah, I went for his wedding. Guess what? I met some of these youth and some of these young adults I used to have these debates with back when I lived there, and they collectively had changed. Collectively, they had changed. I want y'all to keep that in mind. So collectively, this was changing in that town. No joke. Now I'm in Riyadh. They know better than to talk like that. Some of them do, but for the most part, they're a bit more sensitive about that. But yeah, actually, this sort of thing can be changed amongst them with the right words and things like that. When you start dealing with the ones from whom this coon-servatism actually springs, which is the white conservatism, don't mistake their conservatism for ours. Not in the least bit. Because it seems that on an individual basis, we do agree as to what behavior is right and what is wrong. But on a systemic basis, we don't agree on that. And that means that in actuality, there's some point in which on an individual basis, they don't believe in the same definitions of right and wrong as us. We're just not sure exactly where that disconnect is, but it's there. We can tell. Because they don't believe that it would have ever been okay for anybody, even from Eastern Europe, let alone from outside of Europe, to go into Western Europe and do to them what they did to others. They're a bunch of damn psychopaths that are not capable of learning when they're wrong anyway. If there's any subhuman, it's the ones who think like that from amongst them. So what if they're So what if there are neighborhoods that it's now becoming no-go crime zones because of so-called immigrants? And it's not like they didn't do anything to earn it. It's not like their ancestors didn't do it. Where are these immigrants coming from? Places their ancestors colonized. Generally speaking, that's where they're coming from. And then when they are facing discrimination and they're not hired for the good jobs, the ones that feminists say that you should hire them for, and not the jobs that they'll never try to get. Yeah, well, when these immigrants from colonized lands are not hired for these good jobs, then yeah, they're broke. They're poor. They don't have much. They deal with that. It's their kids who grow up and go to school with the citizens and see the major differences that say, shuck this fit. This is not okay. I was born here. I woke up in a maternity ward in this country just like this other kid did. Well, my parents got to automatically have less. And their land was colonized. And shuck this fit. Those kids have a very, very harsh choice to make. They can go back to their parents' homeland where everything's broken and it wasn't by their parents' people, or they can stay in that new land when everything ain't broken, but they're not going to be treated equally. That creates an angst. We have that in Black America. My wife straight told me, she said to me, Black man, you can't go back to Africa. Now, she's right about a lot of parts of Africa. That's true. Depends on where I go and how much is broken. But she was right that there are many parts that are broken and I could not go back there and live. And I also can't go back to the States and tolerate being treated differently. And this may very well mean I wind up dead, shot with bullets, because I finally just throw the gauntlet down and say, shuck this fit. I'm not making this tough choice between these two things, neither of which I deserve. It may happen. It very well may happen. We can see it with the Tate arrest. Truth be told, you tell some of the white manosphere guys that talk that conservatism stuff and then mention that Tate's dad is black, African American, and Tate's identified as such. Mention that to them. Hell, mention some of the people that started the platforms on which they're standing. Barbarossa, an Afro-Latino. Mention the identities to these guys and watch what happens. Because we had some black men that tried to join the Proud Boys and they were shown you are still an N-word. You are an N19. This was told to them. We got to do the right thing for the right reasons. And moral conservatism, I'm going to tell you it's right, but we got to do it for the right reasons. And frankly, to be honest, I'm actually kind of proud of a lot of the black manosphere because it seems to be that this has been kept up. So, it means what I've seen over the last 2 years, I'd say, seems to be an improvement in this. I want to make sure we don't forget and that we keep up the good work. And I want to make sure that we take our enemies as enemies. I've had to admit, I've had to sit up and examine evidence over the years to find out that the majority of black Western women are our enemies. Not all of them, of course, I know, but more of them are than not, and they don't even all know they are. But I've had to accept this. Now, I didn't blindly accept it about 2.5 years ago. I said, let me see where this goes. But I can honestly say, yeah. Hell, the Golden Sphere showed me that. I saw it even there. One woman that said she wasn't going to trip about a man's job and finances got chewed up by the other women for that. Now, was she still harsh and aggressive? She could be, but she was chewed up for that. They thought she was making things too easy. She was being too soft. Another one that said, I can't get with the arguments. I'm too feminine for this. That woman wound up having a website where men paid her to talk trash to them. Then she would take their payment information and would send it to their wives to break their marriages up. And I saw the website. Couldn't believe my eyes, but it was her. They were the same woman. I was like, how the hell do you find any man to stay with you? This woman can't appreciate any man enough. No man's gonna be good enough for her. She's talking trash like this to dudes, and they're dumb enough to pay her to do it. But that was the Golden Sphere. It showed me that, you know what, it's a problem. Most Western women are enemies to men of their own race first, then enemies to men in general after that. But the most white Western women are enemies to white men. But I had to learn that. And I'm telling you now, look, it didn't start organically and naturally. There is a group of people that is responsible for this. And the men that have the nerve to sit up and rail against what the women are doing to them, rightly so, then have the nerve to turn around and have the same racial chauvinism that they don't tolerate from their women. They're hypocrites. Because black men have never believed in oppressing black women because they're women. We've never believed in that. As a whole, we haven't believed in that. Even the 90s rappers that seemed misogynistic back in the day, we're finding out where they're getting this from. Because the mindset of the women about whom they were talking crept into the suburbs. Now you got Huxtable chicks trying to run the same games on bras. They got it from the ratchet, stereotypical ghetto Isha sitting next to them in class. She laced her up. Even if she didn't like her, she laced up because she hated us more. And then Miss Huxtable, little Miss Huxtable, decided to go back into the Huxtable neighborhood and try that stuff on us. And we're like, man, shuck this fit. This is disrespectful as hell, man. We were coming up, not even fully aware what was going on, but years later with social media, we looked and said, damn, his bitch tried to do the same thing to me. That scandalous bitch. That's what wound up being the case. So now the sister is an enemy to her man, just like Becky's an enemy to hers. And don't get me started on the Western women of Asian origin. Hell, and why do I call them enemies to their men? Some say, well, other women don't talk that bad about their men. They may not single their men out by race per se, but they do. But Asian women, good God almighty, they're not necessarily as loud with it, but they'll do it. You try to introduce one to her own. Oh, I don't date Asian guys. You're Asian. What's the problem? Yeah, but that doesn't mean I have to date an Asian man. This happened. Somebody told me this back in 1993. I remember that. I wasn't in college yet by that point. 1993, I remember. We had to leave the coast and go to the state capitol. It was school related, but you had a lot of schools that had a competition. It was in the state capitol, legislative buildings. I remember that, and I was having chopping it up in one of the hallways of it with another cat from another school. I mean, he was from another county altogether, actually. And I remember these girls, two Asians, I don't know what nationalities their parents were. And I was saying something about how I was justifying the NOI's policy. The Nation of Islam has a policy. If you marry somebody white, you're out. Now, I don't know if they still enforce it, but I was justifying it at that time. I said, I met a guy and he was married to a lady from Puerto Rico. Now, I didn't state the blackness of the Puerto Ricans. I said he was allowed to stay in. If you married white, you're out. Woman marrying a white man, black man marrying a white woman, you're out. And these Asians said, well, what's the problem with that? And I said, wait a minute. So let me get this straight. If your country has an Independence Day, then from whom did they get this independence? Some African nation? And there the lady said, well, I mean, I think white guys are attractive. And I said, okay, but does that mean that, okay, what do you think about your own men? I'm not attracted to Asians. So I saw that. I saw that myself before I was even done with high school. And now I don't know if they were attracted or unattracted to black men, but they were not attracted to men of their own. And they didn't really blast me. They just said, I just don't find them attractive. However, a lot of them will tell you, we don't find our own men attractive. And if you ask them, that's in Japan or in the States, you ask them what it is, and they will say things like they're not masculine and they got little dingalings. And I seriously doubt that it's really that simple, but that's what they'll say. These are things they say. One woman said that Bruce Lee was one of the only Asian men she could find attractive because he took the image of the Asian man and put balls on him. She actually didn't say the image. She said that he put balls on the Asian man. She didn't say on the image. She was not willing to separate the image from the reality in terms of what she found attractive. What does that tell you? Don't let anybody single us out, because that's one of the things conservatives love to do. They don't really love anybody, but they love to try to single us black folk out like we're the worst. And we've fallen for it. So whenever you sit up and say only black people, and you fill it in with something negative after that, you're actually taking white conservative talking points. Don't get it upped for. That's why I tell you, if you're going to mention a specific combination, be my guest. But you're going to mention one specific bad habit by itself, don't do that. And single us out for that. That's something they would do. They'll sit up and say, they'll sit up and talk bad about things that other groups of people do, and still they'll say only the N words, and they'll throw something in the blank. That's them. That's their talk. I'm done ranting. Thank you for being patient with me through all of this. As always, black heart, black mind, blackout. Assalamu alaikum in black. Heterosexual, non-select, male power just because they don't like in black patriarchy. Until extinction of Judgment Day. Thanks again for flying Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb, and I hope you keep jetting black with me till the wings and the wheels fall off. Justice forever.